Wonderful.
Good morning.
Good morning, indeed. It's nice to see all of you this morning.
And it's the 12th of January. Our topic today is the power of stillness. That sounds sort of like an oxymoron, doesn't it? How can you be powerful when you're still? But it's very true that when you're still on the inside, you can be much more powerful on the outside than when we get all upset and raging or just so upset that we can't function in a way that we're designed to function effectively, which is with calmness and wisdom. Uh, a lot of things have gone on this week, and one of the most important ones, I think, is the celebration of Jimmy Carter's life. I was so happy to learn more about his whole life and his presidency with all of the radio interviews I heard on the radio and the TV things, but he was just a remarkable man and an interesting juxtaposition with our current president, our soon to be president.
Yeah.
But one of the things that his grandson said about him, and I thought it was so moving at his memorial service, he said Jimmy Carter, built houses for people who needed homes. Um, he eliminated diseases in forgotten places. I didn't even know he did that, but he went to Africa and
Oh,
other
yeah.
places and eliminated diseases. He waged peace wherever he could find it, wherever it was needed in the world. Wherever he saw a chance, he loved people. And he always raised an end of quote, by the way. And I thought that was so beautiful and so true. He won a Nobel Peace
Yeah,
Prize.
he did.
He said on the radio I was listening, he said what he was most proud about with his presidency is not a single bullet was fired. No war was waged in his presidency. That's what he was so proud of. And that he continued helping people so vigorously with Habitat for Humanity is really incredible. And he did it up into his elderly years.
Hmm.
He never stopped. And even with the people that he worked with, he raised them up. Uh, he never looked down on them or put down on them or tried to be superior. He elevated
Well, he
people.
made a spiritual home for everyone. And I think one of the things we do very often is we make the home that we live in too small for anyone else to join us, and we don't realize that that's happening. So, if we can build a home in which people can come and go and be invited and not be judged and not be made wrong and not be have war waged against them, that's huge. But the whole idea of thinking about building a home for those who need a home, and the first person we need to build a home for is ourselves. What kind of house do you live in? What kind of home have you built for yourself? Mine, I noticed, has often way too much noise, and that takes us to the power of silence.
Mm.
That in my house, sometimes I have
Not
to,
not our home,
no,
but
no,
in
my,
your.
my mental home, I have to try to find a room that's quiet
Uh-huh.
because there's the judge, there's the critic, there's the dreamer, there's the complainer, there's the one who's monitoring, everything you can think of, the news, the worrier. There is so many rooms occupied with noise. And so this idea of the power of silence is really important.
And stillness.
Stillness, because, and I think one of the things that people that meditate enjoy is if they've done this long enough to be capable or to have some mastery over it, what they have been able to do is to create a quiet space in which if spirit were to speak or something were to be seen that is not in the normal everyday experience is now visible as possible. And so very often, I don't think we can be at our spiritual best because of the noise in our head. And I know that sometimes when I do prayer work, the first thing I say is, I try to connect with my source, and then in the back of my mind is, are you doing this right? How do you know source is really there? Maybe source doesn't care. And it's like, excuse me, how could you say all these things? Well, because that noise in the background is always there unless you find something to supplant it, something to replace it. And I think that's really, really important.
Yes, and I remember Jimmy Carter's presidency. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
and I always liked him. But the news coverage is always so busy criticizing that they don't tell you all of the good things he's doing. That's not news,
Yeah.
to report the good things. And it's a shame because he really had many accomplishments. Of course, I knew about the
Homes for Habitat, yeah.
no, in the peace that he
Oh,
created. It was turned out to be temporary between Egypt and the Holy Land, I believe. And but that was quite remarkable that he even tried to do that, much as he brought them to Camp David and they worked out an agreement. And so he really was a peacemaker. One of his quotes about his life is he said, I have one life and one chance to make it count for something. I'm free to choose that something. My faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I can, whenever I can, or as long as I can. And he certainly did do it a long time, didn't
right.
he? He was
But he
amazing.
created a space for it. He created a space for his faith being an integral part of his life. Some of us have our faith unfortunately compartmentalized, and we bring it out on a Sunday, or we bring it out when somebody's sick and we need a prayer. We often,
Mm.
our faith is often something that's in reserve rather than present every day. And I think for us, as we evolve spiritually, our faith is an integral part of our everyday expression and experience, as opposed to something that we have like an insurance policy. And for a lot of people, unfortunately, their spirituality is an insurance policy. And that's okay to have insurance. It's okay to be wherever you are, but to move in that direction, to have it become an integral part of your everyday experience, uh, just changes everything.
Another happening this coming week is that it will be National Religious Freedom Day, January 16th. And, that is one of the things that's rather unique I think, in our country, although we don't always exemplify it very well. Our ancestors from England came here for religious freedom
Yeah.
and then didn't want any others.
It's not
They wanted religious freedom for themselves,
it's
not
not any
anybody
different.
else.
It's not any different than immigration. People come here and now I'm from another country, yes, but we don't want anybody
We
else
don't
from
want
that
any.
country, right? Okay, okay. Came here for religious freedom, came here for personal freedom. Now that I've got mine, please stay home. Yeah.
And although in our teaching we certainly honor and celebrate and share the wisdom of Jesus and the teaching of Jesus, because we have some differences from Christianity, I realized that our religion could not have started 100 years ago if it weren't for this religious freedom that's part of
Mhm.
our government. And so it is really worth celebrating. Um, it doesn't always go smoothly, as we're seeing now that we have so many religions and for example, the South in many places consider this a Christian nation, and they just don't understand why anybody would be against the Ten Commandments being up in their school or saying the Lord's Prayer. Well, the Lord's Prayer doesn't fit very well with Buddhists or Hindus, and we have those people in our country. It's a wonderful prayer, and the Ten Commandments are wonderful. However, the Ten Commandments really have their origin in a very ancient um, age in the area that Jesus was from. Of course, they came from Moses, not Jesus, but I'm trying what they call that region, but it's in that whole region, and that it was called the Code of Hammurabi. And it's much longer than 10, as it is in the Bible. There are 113 commandments, not 10. You can look it up in Deuteronomy. But at any rate, there's nothing wrong with those 10 commandments, but there is something wrong in deciding our nation is all Christian, because it's not. It is the majority Christian, but we represent religious freedom. So we want to honor that and be proud of that, and not forget. So with this idea of stillness, we are in a time of great turmoil all over the world, and it's hard to watch the news with the wars that are going on because they are so graphic in your living room now. Um, and so, how do you stay still when you see mayhem going on in the world. Well, we have to be still there first. We have to get calm inside, knowing we are one. We are one with the divine. We are one with all of our brothers and sisters. And it's only, and with stillness, can we make any difference?
I find it helpful to think that life is eternal, that however many people perish in any incident or circumstance or situation,
Exactly.
that is just a chapter. I would, if I were likening it to school and I were to say, after you graduate from high school, you're dead and it's gone. Wow, why did I even bother? As opposed to you graduate from high school and now you go to college. College is in another dimension. But if we can think of it that way, I think it's really helpful for our own personal stillness to be able to realize we're on a journey that is a never-ending journey that will unfold for us possibilities that we could not even have considered but in our present form. I know that when I went to college, the things that I learned I wouldn't even have considered when I was in grammar school.
Right. It wouldn't make any
It
sense to
wouldn't
you.
exactly, and yet after a while, it all not only made sense, it even made my grammar school experience make sense. And so I think it is helpful whenever we're faced with the tribulations and terrors that are ongoing right now in our nation to realize this is a very painful part of our education.
Not just our nation, our whole
Yeah,
world.
yeah, yeah. And when I see the fires in California, when I see the events that are happening, these kinds of horrible things that are happening are horrible to be in the experience of. At the same time, we have to know that we are speeding through an educational process that will unfold with us being more awakened than we can even understand at this point in our lives.
Exactly. Rumi always has
I like
wonderful
that.
wisdom to share in very succinct words. He says, listen to silence. It has so much to say.
I love it. You know what I like about Rumi is that he takes the most profound, deepest ideas that we need to give consideration to or need to give ourselves time to attend to, and he does it in a way that makes me smile. And I think it makes me think that if you're practicing if you have a spiritual practice and it's not making you smile, it's not bringing joy to you, then you need to go back to what is it? Am I making this my next job? Am I trying to qualify? Am I trying to be good at it? Because when Rumi talks about going out into the field, and I don't remember the quote exactly, but I'll meet you there. Uh,
Somewhere out beyond the ideas of right
right and
doing
wrong.
and wrongdoing,
Yeah,
there is a field.
I'll meet you there.
I'll meet you
I
there.
love it because it's a field. It's not a church. It's not a temple. It's a place where I can meet you with love and kindness and a smile, not with worry and the need to be right. And I think so much of our life, unfortunately, without meaning to, is focused on the right and wrong of it, the good and the bad of it. How am I doing? I know in my house, I have at least several rooms that are full of rights and wrongs, more than 105 commandments. There's lots and lots more of them than that. So we need to, if we can, have a spirituality that makes us smile. And I would even suggest to you just to experiment with it when you're meditating. Try smiling during the meditation. Allow yourself
Mm.
to embrace it in a way that much more like a child who gets a present that says, "Oh, this makes me so happy."
Well, it is a true experience for me that when I meditate, uh, it may not be in words, but there is so much that is shared with me that brings me peace and love and stillness. And that's the idea. That's the stillness we need to be centered. Another word is centered.
Mhm.
I remember traveling on an airplane once, and a man from California was telling me about, when he's centered, and I didn't know what that meant. What does that mean, centered? But it means at the core of your being, where all is calm or
It's
can be.
funny, you may not know what centered means at the time, but you sure know what it means to be off center.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Uh, Eckhart Tolle says this: to do everything in a sacred manner means to do everything fully in a state of presence. So it doesn't mean walking around like a monk and not speaking or things like that, to do it in a sacred manner. It means to be in a state of presence. In other words, your inner self is present, not your ego self that could be afraid of others or fear or not trusting of others. You know, as human beings, we have to sometimes be guarded how we act and what we say around certain people. But this kind of a sacred manner means just to be fully in the state of your inner presence.
You know, I've been in the process of co-authoring a book as the artist, and I find myself needing on a fairly regular basis to shift from I've got to get this done to I need to experience it fully. And when I need to embrace the process, it becomes something that's like an adventure. When I need to get this done, I'm a clock watcher. I'm
Mhm.
frustrated that it's taking as long as it is, or that this has to happen versus that, or that I'm interrupted. And, you know, it's just important. And I think when you talk about the stillness, the first thing that comes to my mind is slowing down.
Mhm.
You know, slowing down, you know, when you enter into prayer, if there's a person or a deity or a source that you refer to it slowly and articulately and enunciate it in your mind. Allow yourself to feel it and watch what happens to you as you make that connection rather than, okay, Holy Spirit, let's get on with it. You know, what do I got to do next?
Yeah, yeah, next,
Yeah,
next.
yeah, I got some requests and I know you're behind and I got a lot of stuff on my mind too, but I'm doing my meditation now. And
Yeah.
I don't think we even notice sometimes how fast we move through rather than in.
I rapidly go through my to-do list. As
Mhm.
soon as I get one thing done in the day, it's next, next, next. I often make a list at the beginning of the day and check things off as they're done. And it's very efficient, but it's sure not centered in stillness.
Right. So it's a balancing act. I mean, there's a lot of things that we don't have time to enjoy the level of stillness we would like. There's a lot of things we have to do quickly, and we can't necessarily engage. But where you can, if the practice you have is to constantly be aware of how I'm involved in this divine experience of life, then what happens is it becomes more of a divine experience.
Right. Just an awareness of the divinity of everyday life. Yeah, exactly. Um, this title about stillness really came from Deepak Chopra. And a quote I have from him is, in the midst of movement and chaos, keep stillness inside you. So we can't always keep the stillness outside of us. There is often chaos happening outside, but we can keep it here where in our hearts where it matters. Keep yourself centered. So, you know, you don't get all frenzied and people think they have to attack when they get scared or are upset. And that's just not helpful when they attack everybody.
You know, in
It's just not helpful.
the old TV series, some of you can remember, and most of I think our audience can remember. Not everybody will. The Kung Fu series that I used to love that, and the master rolls out a roll of rice paper on on the ground, and he says to Grasshopper, who is what he calls his student, the task is to walk from where you are to me without tearing the paper. And I think so often we tear up the world with each footstep we take because we're not aware of the steps we're taking.
Mhm.
We're
The
not aware
damage
of
we're
the
doing.
impact, the
Mhm.
damage that we're doing. Just to become more present of our step in our each step is that's huge. And so if the walk you're walking is destructive and tearing things up, one of the problems with that is that eventually you'll have to make those repairs. Eventually you'll have to face all of the damages. And so the less damage you do,
This
because
life or another,
yeah,
right?
right. Well, and the more present you are, you know, I remember somebody I was working with them in counseling, and she got really mad and she broke all of her china. She threw it on the floor. She said, "It felt so good," and I said, "Well, was there a part of it that didn't feel so good?" She said, "Yeah, happy to clean it up, and then having to buy more." You know, so she was, and we talked about, you know, throwing the paper plates next time. And,
I wonder if it would have the same result.
no, it wouldn't. But I think what we don't realize very often is that there are consequences for not appreciating the stillness. There are consequences for not engaging in this life process. I think about I work a lot in with recovering people because I work in a treatment center, a mental health treatment center where there's a lot of addiction. And one of the hardest things to have people be able to do as they get into recovery is to savor the moment as opposed to resent the past and fear the future. To savor those moments, to engage in the moment to moment living. And, part of addiction is, waiting for the opportunity to feel good rather than embracing the possibility of feeling good in every moment.
Indeed, indeed. So you might ask, well, I know I'm supposed to right wrongs when I can and help people when I can. How can I do that with stillness? I don't know. Think of some models. Think of Jimmy Carter. Think of
Gandhi.
Jesus. Jesus did not go quietly into that dark night. Jesus um, s- stepped in when he thought wrongs were being done, even when they were legal in the Jewish law and Jewish religion. When a stoning was occurring, he stepped in. Of course, stonings were always for women.
Well, yeah.
they were they were the only ones who could commit adultery. Men didn't commit adultery, just women did. And because they were concerned about that bloodline to remain pure Jewish. And men could have as many wives as they wanted, as many concubines as they wanted, but women would be stoned if they were found to be adulteresses. So, but he stepped in. He said, "No, no, this is not right. He who is without sin, let him cast the first stone." And of course, nobody did, because nobody was without sin. So he intervened, and most times did it with a sense of calmness and presence.
I think Gandhi is a good example of that.
Gandhi's a great example.
Yeah.
Oh, the nonviolent movement is a great example. Martin Luther King is a great example.
Hmm.
That you can stand up for your rights without offending and killing other people.
You don't have to tear the rice paper.
Don't have to tear
Yeah.
the rice paper. That's right. You can walk gently on this earth. Thich Nhat Hanh helped. He's not with us anymore, but helped so many people who were in agony emotionally. They would go to his plum. What was it? Plum. His ashram, if you would, was called Plum
I don't
something,
know.
and they would just walk. Called it mindful walking,
Hmm.
walking in silence and not speaking, just walking, because that helped him as a Vietnamese monk after the Vietnam War. He had seen so many atrocities, and he just walked. I think he walked to several other countries, actually, and he found that the walking was very healing for him. Mindful walking, again, being still on the inside while walking. And so we may be in turbulent times and we may have turbulent times coming up, but we need to remember, not try, but we need to remember to have stillness within,
Hmm.
have stillness within.
I like the walking because it's a way to see everything and nothing in particular. And, to be able to see everything and not have to do anything with something that's particular. We begin to survey the life experience, to survey the walk. The walking has multiple benefits, of course, because the senses are able to embrace the moment to moment experience of the walk as opposed to focusing on something and then having to work on changing it or fixing it or repairing it or doing anything with it. So, yeah, I highly recommend walking not only for health and well being, but walking for peace and the peace of mind.
I think his community was called Plum Village.
Okay.
But I want to close with one last quote. Uh, because this is something we can do. It's an active thing when we are disturbed by what we are having happen around us or what we witness. And that's by Michael Beckwith, Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith in the Los Angeles area, where his prayers are really needed right now. But he says, our task is not simply to fix something that's broken, not to set it right, but to see it rightly. And I think that's so wise because even in the midst of chaos, wars, fires, tragedies, to see it rightly is to see it with an eternal view, that yes, this is awful right now and it's painful, but in the long run, we know that all is well. All is well. And with our country and our politics, we may not know what's coming, but we can know that whatever is right because of consciousness, what the people have chosen. So look at it rightly, and don't condemn something because I don't like it. It simply is, and be at peace with that. And then you can have stillness within.
So you're going to go to the share screen?
I am going to go to share screen. I would like to invite everyone who is able and would like to support our ministry. We know many of you do automatically. You have that all set up. And there are ways you can do that by going to ways to donate, for whether it's a one-time donation or set it up for regular donations. And we so appreciate it because it's needed. It has, we are a center and it has expenses. So we like to, at this time, do an affirmation for our own personal prosperity, because as we give, we do receive. It's a law. It's a law. You have to have the law. It's called the law of circulation. You have to give to open up the circulation for money to come into you. So our affirmation is, my investment today is made with the full realization that God is the source of my supply and returns it to me enriched and multiplied. And so it is. All right.
Stop sharing down here.
Thank you. I was looking for that.
And now let's close.
Do we end the meeting right now?
No,
Yes.
no, stop recording.
Oh. Where do you see that?
Recording at the top.
It's happening soon.